All right. You know what time it is? Thursday night. We are back again for another powerful discussion, the cocktail conversations in the counselor's corner. I am your host, David Lorenzo Glover, aka the controversial counselor. Joining me is my co-host, Herb Lewis, the Big Bad Wolf, and also we have one of our regular panel members, Lakia Perry. We are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. Tonight, we're going to take a look at the scenario empty bed. And relax, people. I know Monday night we had a rated X show. And you're probably thinking, like, oh, not again. Not talking about what happens in the bed. Nah, this is not that. This is far from that. And not even close to ever being a part of that life. So, anyways, and I'm going to read the whole scenario, but I'm just going to give you a quick snapshot. It deals with a 50-year-old man that works housekeeping at a hospital. He happens to be a virgin who still lives with his parents. Oh boy, what a late bloomer. The question I would like to know, do you place any blame on his dad for not raising him to be more of a productive man with a fulfilling relationship that would have got him from under their roof? So many variables to address. So join us tonight. Help break down this scenario. Please like and share this video, and please subscribe to my YouTube page, The Controversial Counselor. Now let me read the whole scenario. Empty bed. Cyrus, a 50-year-old housekeeper at Susquehanna Memorial Medical Center, was very well liked around the hospital, mainly because he knew his music. I don't care if it was country, R&B, hip hop, jazz, blues, rock. He knew his music, and he loves engaging people in these conversations. Many of his colleagues thought he would make an excellent music history teacher at a community college. Cyrus never pursued that interest any further. He has been working at the hospital ever since he graduated from high school. He also still resides at home with his parents. In a recent conversation, he shared with one of the nurses that he never had a girlfriend and he remains a virgin to this day. The nurse asked, was he interested in her helping him find a girlfriend? Cyrus agreed with excitement. On the outside, Cyrus appears to be socially awkward, but he has a heart of gold on the inside. In a situation like this, should his dad be blamed for not schooling his son so that he can enjoy the enrichments of a companionship? Certainly, it's a father's duty to teach his son to become a man and to enjoy the fruits and labors of being a man. Do you agree or disagree? Talk to me, people. So we have a lot going on, a loaded conversation tonight, and I'm not going to even. I don't have any housekeeping news other than nah. Other than can't believe now. Remember, I always bring up the school system. Remember, for a while, it took us a while to come back to school. Then we started off with 2 days. Then they just opened it up for students to come. I think this past week, Monday, for 4 days a week. And those were special needs students and students with, IEPs and 504s plans. And I'm not going to get into the breakdown of that if you don't know what that is. And now, I think just as effective last night, they said everybody can come on back. Come on back. It's a big party. Granted, we only got like a month left of school, or in actual days, like 19 days. So this has just been 1 year to remember. A hell of a year. Man, I haven't had that much student contact. Yeah, I know I said I've been looking for the drama with the students, but I'm just exhausted with all the back and forth and all that. And next year we're slated for everybody supposed to be back on track. They just this what the CDC just said about the mask, and they'd only have to be 3 feet apart when they're outside. They don't have to have their mask on long as they stay 3 feet apart. They could have their mask in their pockets or around their neck, and teachers to still have their mask on when they're around the kids. It's just I don't know. This is like I don't know. This is like living a damn like you're in the twilight zone or something. That's just the only housekeeping or concern that I had on my mind. Let's get to the main subject. Before I say that, what's going on, Herb? How you doing, Lakia?
Another date.
Hello, doing well.
That's great. That's great. So, with this situation, what's your take on it? Shall I take 50-year-old man living with his parents, virgin, never had a girlfriend. I think that's probably one of the saddest things. It's it saddens me. It saddens me that that's the case with some individuals and some people. We know that they have disabilities and stuff like that, so that would never be their lifestyle. But I think if you go to work every day, you've been working a job since high school, you should be you should have some type of interaction with the opposite sex or hell, same sex in this day and age, but something, just something. What's y'all take? Talk to me.
This is probably going to be one of the few times that I place the lion's share of a son's non-functioning, I don't want to say dysfunctional, non-functioning abilities on him. And people will probably say, well, doesn't the mother bear some responsibility to her child, or in this case, their child's lack of social development? And I would say one could look at it like that. But generally, in a familial setting, there is no rite of passage, especially for Native Black Americans. There's no rite of passage for a boy into manhood. So one of the few things that a boy generally can have some control over is the sort of social interaction with the opposite gender. Now, I know when this was posted in group, a lot of people were focusing on whether or not he was a special needs student or he has some type of mental development issues. And that may be true, but that still doesn't preclude him from being a part of society. And to me, being a part of society is being able to go out and being able to interact with, like you just said, David, whether it's people of your own gender or people of the opposite gender. Either way, you should be able to be a sociable person. I remember this reminds me of the movie of I think it was Rain Man, when um geez, I forget his name. Tom Cruise. Oh, was it Tom Cruise? I can't recall. Hey, stop, boy, stop. Tom Cruise. I think it was. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, took the
It was Tom Cruise. It was that. It was him.
took the boy, or took the special needs kid to him with the casino, and he was racking up. So it becomes those moments where a father needs to, if this is the case, the father needs to take that child aside and see to it that that child is adequately, pardon me, brought along at whatever speed that child needs to be brought along, so that child can engage successfully in the society that he lives in. I mean, that's in essence what we're talking about, is his ability to be able to socialize at the level that he's at. So I don't know how a father, either willfully or through benign neglect, doesn't address a primary function of just human life. I mean, I've seen people who are low functioning, geez, terms just eluding me tonight, lower functioning individual still be able to engage in social activities. So I don't know how a father actually even allows this. I mean, it's it's for me, it's borderline child abuse. But I'll leave that alone for another time. But yeah, this is one of those things where I believe the father needs to step in and do whatever is possible just to assure that that child of his, especially the son, can function, because they're not going to be around his entire life. If he's 50, chances are they're in their probably late 60s, early 70s, which means, given the life expectancy of people just in general, that they'll die soon. So what is he going to do? How is he going to be able to survive if he's not making enough money to take care of himself? And also, how does he avoid becoming a victim or prey, if you will, of somebody who has ulterior motives if he has money set aside? Somebody come a woman that has less than altruistic intentions, come take him aside, set him up in a bad way, and take advantage of him sexually because he's inexperienced, and he's going to be in a far worse situation than what he is now.
Whew, okay, Lakia. Now here, a motherly perspective on this. What's your take on this grown ass man? I'm not gonna make light of it, because actually I feel bad for the situation. But what's your take on it?
Everybody's situation is going to be different as to why. And Herb mentioned some things and you mentioned some things about disabilities, but there's also religious reasons. So basically, what mainly the question is asking, if it's the dad to blame. It doesn't. It can come from different ways of why this man is a virgin. It could be because he experienced abuse growing up in his home that has just put since from youth he just locked in his mind that it's not important for him to engage with anyone relationship wise or sexually because of seeing that abuse growing up. Maybe he was abused growing up himself, physically, sexually, in ways that just turned him off. I think some people have the ability to set their mind to stay away from something based on whatever past or present reasons, and that's what works for them. Does it mean it's a bad thing? No, because you know what? Honestly, sex sometimes is just too much, because it causes so much emotional connection, and to a point that at times you don't even have emotionally control of yourself. So I think he did a great job. But as far as the father, we don't know. I didn't hear you say that his father did not try anything. I did not hear you say that his father did try anything. So if I was to make a critical thought on this, I would say maybe the father did try to do something, and the son just was not engaging. And then you think about it, for him to still be home living with his parents, I don't know. I would say maybe that point they need to say, hey, you're 50 years old. It's time for you to get your own place. I would try to maybe say that, but if he, but if he's paying half their bills and they're feeling comfortable and they're casino goers, they might say, hey, we enjoy him paying these bills with more money in our pocket. So you just never know what the situation is. But to me, at 50, he should be on his own. He should, if sex or no sex, or girlfriend or no girlfriend, he should still be living on his own. If he's capable of doing that. I don't think any grown-up should be living with their parents at 50 unless it's warranted for caring for that family, a family member, parent, and it could be that situation too. You didn't say that wasn't a reason. I'm just, it can go in any direction why he's still home, but if it's because he's taking care of his mother or his father, then that would be a reason why. But as far as him being a virgin, it could be by choice, and it's not a bad thing, in my opinion.
Before we go any further, let me do a little spill, give you some of the perspectives, the knowledge, actions, and the consequences, so that can give us a little more to play with. So some of the perspectives was his dad is not responsible for this. His job is to instill confidence in his son. At some point, Cyrus needs to be responsible for him. Being socially awkward is not a manhood issue. Someone else said his parents have kept him sheltered in a bubble, which in turn he has been missing out on many of the essential things in life. Him finding a woman may be unrealistic at this point. Damn, I guess when you hit 50, you're done. Is that what they said? You're done? Wow. Okay. Somebody said, I am disturbed by him not having a girlfriend, but he is 50 years old and still living with his parents. If he is mentally challenged, there are programs called Aspire. Okay. So, knowledge. Cyrus is a very nice young man who I assume that may be touched with Asperger's syndrome or some form of, autism. So he's very socially awkward and can strike up a conversation about music. It could talk about an hour straight discussing the history and all the genres of music. It is highly unlikely he will meet someone unless he attends some program or different events. His days more than likely consist of work, then home. Here's some actions. The reality is sad that someone's life is so structured and his parents have not taken him off the nipple to give him some freedom to grow and develop as a man. I hate to see what will become of Cyrus if something happens to his parents. I really think he needs to transition into an independent living facility or at least attend a weekend program where he has the chance to socialize with others that may be at the same level mentally or some of the same interests. I think he could have taught a history or a music class at a community college. He is that informed or has that much insight on music. Now, finally, consequences. More than likely, Cyrus will grow old with his parents and remain America's most oldest virgin. I don't know all the family dynamics. It may be one of those situations where the rest of the family may say it's not our concern, so they stay out of it and leave it in the hands of his parents until something happens to the parents and they have to deal with the fake ass Berry Gordy.
Wow. Wow.
That was the controversial side of
Wow.
when I wrote
Berry Gordy.
when I wrote the book. So, and we got Brolic T about to come in here. So, I just gave some more information. Hey, Brolic T, how you doing? So, anything else that stands out or comes to your mind on far as experiences or something I said or some of the perspectives that were dropped?
Well, no,
One thing,
go ahead.
no, it's just like it's normal for nuns and priests, and they're not living with their parents, but they're supposed to be virgins.
Hold on.
A lot of them don't be virgins when they go to church, though. A lot of them join the church after they've already been, around the block a couple times.
True. I'll just throw that out there.
I seen them priests at Niagara University. I don't want to badmouth my school because it did a lot for me, that my education there. But it was times when we were out, we see some of them fathers creeping out of the girls' dorm at like after midnight. We like, what? Where he coming from? What he doing? And I know from one of my summer jobs, them priests get it in. When I had to help carry some of the other priests, and this is not the subject, but we're on this, so I'm just gonna finish the story. Other priests that visit from other colleges came there, and I had to help bring their luggage in. I went in the priest's hall, and I'm like, damn, they got whole bars in here, liquor all over the place.
They'll drink up some.
Dudes gets it in.
Yeah, they'll drink up some stuff.
It wouldn't be surprised when I seen them creeping out of the girls' dorm. Somebody was getting plowed, and their tuition was free.
I just thought I'd throw that in for entertainment purposes. That's why I had the air quotes.
I do believe that is why they call it spirits. But and that was the thing I was alluded to earlier, is that even let's take what one of the comments alluded to was he could teach music theory. What I'm beginning to learn in certain aspects is you have to use the tools that a person has in their repertoire to help them build. So if he has an appreciation for music, why not take him to concerts? Doesn't matter what the concert is, so long as he's able to get among people. He and I don't want to use the term handle. He can have somebody chaperone him there, just to make sure that nothing sinister happens to him. That way he starts to get his feet wet. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, and it almost seems that he has not taken any steps, or nobody has kind of prodded him to start taking steps towards just being sociable. Whether sex occurs or not, for me, is immaterial. It's just for him to be able to function in that realm. Like I said, because I don't think normal functioning people, and Lakia mentioned this earlier, just because of the exchange of energy, I don't think we as normal functioning people understand that aspect of life for a lot of us is critical. And for somebody who doesn't get to engage in that aspect of life, for whether it's by choice or by religion, they're missing out on a level of intimacy that can never be fulfilled in any other way. So it leaves them as a person incomplete. It's almost akin, and I'm going to use this real loosely. It's almost akin to a woman who wants to have kids, but she can't have kids because she's barren for whatever reason, whether it's an accident, medical, or any other thing. It's a component that almost makes her feel less than complete. And I can't really tell you how she would feel, or how any woman would feel for that matter. I just know what I hear from women who say that they almost feel like they shouldn't be around because they can't do a basic function that as a female this should be able to do. So it's just one of those things that as a person it completes you. So you walk around, or an individual in the situation walks around with a piece that's not there, that they can't engage in. So it almost makes you wonder if this changes him. And Marcia mentioned it earlier that he could have been the victim of bullying. Lakia mentioned that there could have been some abuse in the home. We don't know the reasons why, so I'm not going to speculate on the reasons why. I'm just looking at the outcomes as they are now and as he is now. So it's just imagine, if you will, having a physical hand but not being able to use it. It would just seem so awkward that you have this appendage, but it serves no purpose.
Just real quick, and I'll probably tease here. I just want to say that to some degree, I disagree, because sex was created for procreation. It was created for people to, to have, to come together and have children. It's supposed to be enjoyable, but it also has its negative things that come with it as well. So to say somebody, oh, you're missing out because you ain't get some, I can't say that would be 100%. I can say that in 100% capacity, because sometimes sex can be very hurtful emotionally. It can be used against you emotionally, but that never feels good.
Isn't that the message? I know for boys, that's the message that we were always taught growing up, and not so much by parents or grandparents, but mainly your peers, stuff that they heard. Like if you wasn't having sex, you was frowned upon, or something is wrong with you and you missing out. So that's the message that I always received. But I used to consider the source and consider, like we talked about last week, who they were sleeping with. And I would say, y'all can have that right there, because I'm going to hold out for something better than that. But I'm gonna let you go back on look here, but it was one of the things that crossed my mind. Could it be like taboo with the parents that back in those days they didn't parents of certain generations didn't look to, or they wasn't aware of different social programs, so it was almost a hidden thing, like we're embarrassed kind of that we have a child that we don't consider normal, so we just go to work, go back home, and we're going to leave it at that because you're not typical like everybody else. So that could have played a part of it. As long as he's going to work, he catches the bus, get back home, he has his little check, we give him a little spending money, he goes out and get what he wants, whether it's some music, some albums, CDs and stuff, and he's good. But we don't want to integrate him into society like that. We just want to keep him hidden. Well, not so much hidden, but it's our secret. It's our family thing that we deal with. That's just another layer to throw out there.
No, that's actually what another point I wanted to bring out was that trauma affects people differently. And I was so happy. I did look up an article, and there was an article on a gentleman that was 56 or 50 years old, and he's a virgin. It was on The Cut, so if you wanted to review it for yourself. But he said the reason why was because of abuse. He saw how his father was. His father abused him mentally, and his mother mentally and physically. He thinks about sex a lot, but he says, my sex drive is just gone. He says, I no longer have much of a libido. It's gone because what he experienced as a young man, just that doesn't entertain him. And so does that mean, and he seems like he's a very sound man. He didn't seem like he had any autism and or any disabilities from reading the article. He has masturbated. So I think maybe, but he said it's not like anything that, I guess, he said, I never had any problems. Oh, he said he never, so he has masturbated. So this is, I've never had any problems reaching an orgasm. So, but he also said he no longer has much of a libido. So, and I've heard even women say that, like even when they're married, that their libido is gone. So, but because they're married, they still have sex with their partner because they're married. But that happens in life too. So I just don't agree with the fact that that's a horrible thing, or would I blame it on the father? He probably could do a little better with being, maybe. But like, again, if his father ain't that type of guy, he's not compassionate, he can care less. He doesn't feel that connection with his children, then that could be where the father does need to grow up in some areas as a father.
Solid T.
I mean, a couple of things came to my mind as I was listening. He could have some form of mental disability because some of them have difficulties with social skills, like when you are autistic, some people with Asperger's, the list goes on. One of the thoughts that came to my mind is maybe he struggles with his sexuality, and that's why he's still living at home. He just never worked up the nerve to tell his parents, hey, I like dudes, or something like that. Maybe he's somebody who has strange sexual proclivities, and that's why he doesn't engage in it as well, because maybe his form of kink is something that most people probably wouldn't go for, or most women wouldn't go for. There's a number of reasons, but I mean, his parents at some point had to know when he was growing up that something wasn't quite right. And my question would be, or I'm curious as to, what did they do about it? Like, did they encourage him to, go to different events? Did they try and take him to different events? Like, if he likes music, did he ever go to a concert? Just to piggyback off what Herb said, like, did they ever take him to a concert? Was he in a band, or like, did he participate in any kind of social things growing up? And if not, then why didn't his parents interject and say, hey, let's go do some stuff, or try and help him? I mean, one of your jobs as a parent is to teach your child social skills. Now, some people get it right, some people don't. There's no handbook on how to teach it, but at the same time, if you're engaging your kid in conversations on a daily basis, you're teaching them some form of social skill. So I'm just curious as to what was his childhood like, because that'll tell you a lot about why he is the way that he is.
And that's one of the things, when I put these scenarios together, certainly I don't never have all the information, but I always look at this as a talking piece that some person right now is going through that with their child. And they're thinking, what is wrong with you, boy? Or what's wrong with you, girl? Or whatever the case is. And just maybe if they're listening, they could say, hey, I need to find out what their interests are and then to follow up with it. So maybe, you'll start seeing something because, again, if it's something you're passionate about and you're doing that and you have the opportunity to do that as a youngster, that's gonna bring something out in you. Yeah, you're gonna start being more social. You're gonna look forward to that program, and you're gonna say, "Hey, when is my program? Tuesday and Thursday." And you're gonna look forward to that, and it's gonna create opportunities for you to dialogue with people with the same interests. And that's not even with somebody with disabilities. That's people overall. Period. If it's something that you look forward to doing and you can't wait, so
Mhm.
even when people get older, the elderly,
Yeah.
sometimes they have to,
Mhm.
instead of sitting around, they may have to join senior citizen clubs and say, "Oh man, we went there, we went bowling, and we had a little dance, or we had, I got some companionship now," and that's type of stuff that keeps them alive.
Right.
We hood, and they look forward to. Everybody has to have something they look forward to. When you stop looking forward to something,
You slowly die.
how meaning on it, what is the point for some? Are you living or are you existing? People want you should want to exist and live at the same time. So it's just something to think about as far as that.
And to follow up with what David is saying, this is what I was alluding to when I was talking about a fuller life. It it's not a manner or an issue of him being sexually active. It's a issue of him being socially active, because if he's socially awkward, at what point in time does does he just not exist?
My name
Because
is
if
Simon. This
because if he's just going to go to work and come home, then at a certain point in time, it's like David said, he's just existing, and he's invisible to the world. So if he doesn't go to work, then and I this is gonna this is gonna strike the wrong way before I say it. I already know how. Then he just may as well just cease to exist. In other words, he just may as well die. And I know that sounds harsh, but in essence, that is just what he's doing, except it's at a much slower rate. Think about like my social life, and I'll use myself. My social life is pretty much non-existent. With the things that I'm doing with the program, work, and some other functions, I don't go a whole lot of places just because of my schedule. But I can, and that's the difference. He can't, because if he's put in a situation to where he has to do something, he's going to feel so awkward that he'll probably just shut down. Conversely, if you put me in a situation, I'm going to flourish because I have the ability and the skill set. So if an individual doesn't have the ability and the skill set, then what can they do?
I feel like I go against what you say. I get what you're saying, though. I do understand what you're saying. The one thing is that, and you did mention it, like as for yourself, you kind of like to you work, and you can go wherever you want to go, whatever. But I don't hear this not this guy's case. He goes to work. He's going to work, and also David talked about the gifts. Everybody has gifts, so his gift is music. He has a memory about music, and that's not a bad thing because I know some people that's what they do. So maybe growing up, he always did want to be a DJ, and just never really pursued that passion, or that the love of music doesn't always say, which it is like a excuse me, my window's open. It is like a some of the maybe what they say, this not symptoms, but what would you call it in counseling terms, like things that would be considered like that could connect him to be having autism or Asperger's or something like that because of the music. But people have a love for music, but it doesn't mean that they have a problem. The only thing I really see that's a problem that could be considered a problem, and it doesn't mean that it is that he's still kind of living at home, which he should have a little bit more of a social life. And pretty much that. And the social skill, not having the social skills, but not having sex, hey, sometimes you ain't missing out. Sometimes big disappointment. And then secondly, we don't always push, like, this is a mental health month. We don't always, growing up in his age being 50 now, or whenever that your book was done, or what he was at that time. I don't know how old he is now, but mental health was never even discussed really back then. Mental health is just really coming out, and even though I worked in mental health for years, but no one really ever wanted to talk about it. And then being parents, sometimes we do get in that mode of like, what? They do what they're supposed to do. They do, you're good. And don't think there's a problem because some things is probably best to leave out of your life because they bring issues. So just about
And I wanted to read, I don't know who made this comment because I can't see it, just a Facebook user, but it said, we are examining this with present day eyes. The Office of OPWDD, TJT is this with developmentally disabilities was not started until 1978. So during his formative years, services were not available to him. I work with individuals every day. When dealing with parents, it is hard for them not to shelter their children. I advocate for the children to have all their goals achieved. He should get enrolled in a counseling program to assist with his social phobias. And that's true. A lot of those laws were not in place, and some parents are not willing to accept that. And we know that to be true with even younger parents, like when you talk about individual education plans and stuff like that. Like, and a lot of it is because you have to have someone that can break down this stuff and put it in layman's term to parents. If you come in talking about the Office of OPWDD to somebody that's older, they're going to look at you like, what the hell are you talking about? But if you have to break it down into simplest terms, and I don't mean dumb it down, but you have to break stuff down in simplest terms so that they can understand or connect to their world. And once you do that, then maybe they can say, you know what, that's a good idea. I think that would be a good plan. But if you got a brochure and you're reading directly from that and you're using all of these medical terms and counseling terms, then those parents, it's going to fly right over their head. So that's another thing, too, that we have to be cautious of.
Yeah, I found the comment interesting in regards to the establishment of that office, and I'm not sure what all the initials stand for, and I think that's probably what you're talking about, Dave. And I think we have to start as just people, regardless of your ethnicity or what your family believes in. We have to stop stigmatizing certain things, and I think any stigma that prevents somebody from getting the assistance that they need, that can allow them to grow, develop, and flourish needs to be addressed. And I think that's the first thing that hinders a lot of people. We can look at substance abuse or any type of abuse. For the first thing that anybody's concerned about is their personal image and their character being tarnished. And that's something that an individual probably has to kind of deal with within themselves. But while they're doing that, I would hope that they could at least have at least one person in the corner, to be an advocate and to help them get on that journey so they can actually start to fix, if you will, or at least address what their problem or issue might be. There's just so many things in the human spectrum of behavior that one could look at and just say, oh, well, that individual has a problem. That individual needs to go get this done. Because I've been told that, look, you just, the need to be perfect with you is just obsessive. And I say, no, I said, that's just how I'm wired. But how I am doesn't affect anyone else. And I know people say, well, that's not true. This person doesn't like you. I'm like, they don't have to like me. I'm not out here hurting anyone. I'm not out here doing wrong. I'm not out here doing evil. 99.9% of the issues, quote unquote, that I have are issues that I am well within control of. And anytime I want to step away from them, I step away from them. But that's just how I live my life. And I would say, people that don't understand me, they're never going to understand me anyway. So why would I try to actually fix something just to appease them? And I think we have a lot of people that live their lives for other people as opposed to themselves. So anytime an individual comes up against something, some resistance, as opposed to what we say in the Black Manosphere, stand on your square, as opposed to standing on their square, they'll acquiesce to whatever the crowd wants to. And that's always a dangerous thing, particularly if you're dealing with an individual who has a diminished capacity or who has special needs. They'll get caught up, and now they're in between two worlds. They're in between trying to impress people in this world because they want to fit in, even though it may be on a limited basis, or they have to withdraw and be a recluse, like this individual might be. So there's always a delicate balance that we as people, no matter what your level of development is, we're trying to have to exist in humanity, so that way we can maintain our level of sanity and still be able to function in the world. This is why I look at what's going on in this city now, and I'm just like, you know what? The best place for me is at home. If I'm not out traveling with the team or I'm not out doing some volunteer function, I'm just like, you know what? There's too many wayward people in the city for me to even be engaged with the masses of them. And if you're not going my way, then you're going a way that I don't want to be bothered with.
And that could be that's pretty much any city. What I did want to touch on and throw another thing out there, and sometimes as fathers, some fathers grow up, they're passionate in sports, and they have that self-fulfilling prophecy, or they want to live, if things didn't work out in the mannerism that they wanted to in their life, and they have a son, they think, oh, he's going to be good in basketball, he's going to be good in football, he's going to do that, I'm going to make sure I push him to do that. And then when they start realizing that's not his thing, he can't chew gum and walk at the same time, but yet he's gifted and talented in other areas, as music or whatever. Some dads are jackasses, and they shut down, and they tell the mom, "You take him there. You take him to the music classes, whatever."
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that. I'm about sports. I'm about physical stuff on football, basketball, wrestling, and all that. And they kind of wipe their hands and say, "No, I don't get up and I'm not doing that. No, I'm not picking him up for music class. I'm not." He wants to dance. I'm not into that old girly type stuff. Whatever. You handle that, which is unfortunate because, damn, I guess as a father, you're supposed to support any of their dreams. So you're supposed to be right there beside them. And if that, because, hey, we know that there's some people that's severely, that ain't the right word severely, but tremendously talented in certain areas that they make it, they blow up and do all that stuff. Don't jump on the bandwagon after the fact. But there are people that's talented in certain areas. But if you have an attitude like, oh, it's all about machoism, you could be missing something or missing some valuable connections you could have built by just being supportive. So that's another
Right.
thing to throw out there.
Now that's basically what I was trying to say as well. Like he likes music. Was he ever supported that way to explore it? What if he talked about being a DJ? Like parents don't always like. What about comedians? I've heard many comedians say they haven't. They didn't. Their parents didn't see them wanting to be a comedian. I mean, didn't support them being a comedian or even a musician. Parents didn't. That's not a job. What is that? What kind of job is that? You ain't getting paid no money. That's on a hope and a dream. So if you didn't have parents that supported your passion, then that could kill a lot of things inside of you. I could just think about like I remember my son wanted to do a lemonade stand. I said, okay. I went and bought all the stuff for the lemonade stand. You think he did the lemonade stand? No. But he ain't not doing on my account because I wanted to support him. And I hear that a lot, that parents do not support their kids in the way, and I've seen it, that they do not support their kids in a way that, when they're young in the direction that they like to go into because it doesn't fit what they think they should be involved in.
To echo what Dave said, there's a lot of fathers who are unable to mentally deal with this type of situation. They'll withdraw, or at worst, they'll shut down. Withdrawing is one thing. Shutting down is a completely different thing, because when you shut down, you refuse to engage. At least when you withdraw, you can always say, okay, you know what, let me get back in. It's the equivalent to quitting on the stool. Nobody wants to see a boxer quit on the stool. That's just, it's like the No Mas. That fight lives in infamy. And for those of you who aren't boxing fans, the No Mas fight, the No Mas is just a fight where Roberto Duran had enough in a boxing match with Sugar Ray Leonard, and he just quit. Just walked out and said, no, I don't want any more. And No Mas is because Duran didn't speak English. He's a Spanish speaking. I can't remember where's Roberto Duran from?
Panama.
Dave. Okay. Panama, of course, the native language is Spanish. So No Mas just essentially means no more. So and I'll tie this in with using what Dwayne Wade is doing with his child. Whatever gender you want to associate his child with, he's supporting his child in this endeavor. Some people disagree. Some people agree. They say, well, he shouldn't be doing this. He shouldn't be doing that. At the very least, he's involved. And this is why I always say that a father has a tremendous amount of input, especially with their boys. Doesn't matter if he's homosexual or heterosexual. At some point in time, he has the ability to push that child just enough to where that child gets uncomfortable. And David always says this, sometimes to get comfortable, you have to get uncomfortable. He has the ability to push that child to where that child gets uncomfortable because that child's growing. And Tiffany said something in a comment. This brings the phrase to mind, failure to thrive. How is this young man or this middle-aged man thriving, or is he thriving at all? So that's why I'm always going to be a proponent of, even if the assistance wasn't available when he was a kid, somewhere along the line in his development, it had to become apparent that he wasn't functioning along the normal spectrum as his peers. You don't need to have a degree. You don't need to be certified. You don't have to be a subject matter expert to see that, hey, wait a minute. Something isn't right here. I know when I was this age, I did X, Y, and Z, or M, N, and O. He's not doing any of that. So what can I do as a father to at least try to get him to take a step beyond where he is? And it's what I said earlier, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. So if he's going to take at least let's just say he takes a step a year. He would have, if he started, let's say he started at age 30, he would be 30 steps ahead of where he is now.
And one of the things I want to add to that is I know the importance of a father supporting you or being positive. And this isn't a shot at my father. May he rest in peace. Whatever. You know, he wasn't. He had other vices that he wasn't actively involved in my youth years when I played sports, and it hindered me because I was pretty good because I played with older kids that was 3 or 4 years older than me. But when it was time to play sports like, you know, Little League, youth sports, Cataract, I never had that chance to shine because I didn't have an advocate there for me. I mean, granted, my aunts, my mother, them, they would come to the game, but they, you know, coaches like, sit down, woman, whatever, back in them days, whatever. And the ones who had their fathers there and said, oh, you need to try my son out at wide receiver or whatever the case is. I'll be out at these practices and I see he one of the fastest on the team. If you don't have that, you get the leftover positions. And that hindered me. And then with my father not being the most encouraging one, and I understand as I get older why that happened, it took confidence away from me. So, like I said, I could have been on a different level as far as sports and stuff like that because I lived it and woke up playing it and had imaginary games, whatever. And I was like a commissioner on North Avenue with sports as far as that. And I bled that but you know, if you don't have someone there to support that, things don't always work out. And you know, even with this subject matter, and I always tell you, we can veer off to a certain ways, but the central theme is I was asking the question, what role did the father play in this young man now that he's 50? It ain't all about him being a virgin or whatever the case is, but what part did he play? And fathers play a valuable role in that on a daily basis. So that's my tidbit.
Yeah, I wanted to mention
that it doesn't sound like his father did anything with him or had any part to play in it. It just seemed like dad went to work and mom's job was to rear him and he just ignored this kid and that was it.
another perspective I wanted to bring is maybe his father had disabilities, mental disabilities. Just because you have a mental disability doesn't mean you don't have children. You know, again, working in mental health, I've seen all kind of folks, and and they had children, and you would think they didn't, you know, but people that, like, let's say these continuing day treatment programs, people meet people, when both of them have, you know, diagnosis, but they go on to have sex, and they have children. Doesn't necessarily, so they didn't have the capability of teaching their son how to be. They barely probably knew themselves. They just, you know, they came together and, you know, the way that they were. So it doesn't always necessarily have to be that the father had the ability to teach him.
Yeah, that's another perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question then. At some point, would the school district, teachers, educational professionals have seen something in his lack of progression? You know, even in class, you know, with students, whatever, regardless of what spectrum they're on, teachers see something because they interact with them in a way that the parents don't, and they'll see his lack of involvement with other classmates, particularly females, and they'll say, is that normal or is that abnormal? And to what you're saying about the parents, parents very well could be in the same vein that he is, and they'll just say, you know what, he'll figure it out. And it's funny that phrase is coming to mind because I was listening to and I'll send you the link to this too, David. I was listening to a podcast by BGS, and he was talking about how young black boys are falling behind because of the lack of education. And this isn't necessarily just a lack of education, but it strikes to how boys are actually treated, at least in this country, especially black boys. So when I clicked on it and we were doing the show, because I just listened to it before I sat down, I was like, this is just apropos. So is it possible for teachers to see something that a parent might miss?
Well, I'm not a teacher. And I want to also put a disclaimer. I'm not a counselor, nor do I.
No.
I'm just saying that I want to make this known that I'm not a counselor, nor do I try to act like I am. I just go off my experiences, what I've seen for myself throughout life. So I'm just saying that as a disclaimer before I say anything else. Nor do I think I'm a know-all of all. I just have I say master, jack of all trades, master of some. But the one thing I would say is this: I would think, and I think for the most, think Product is a teacher, David. They do notice those things, and that's why there's children in certain they would put that child in what is it called in is it ID or what's that called in school? Anyone?
You're talking about an IEP?
IEP, like they're in school, right? I think that's when they do notice that, and they put the child in one of those type of classes.
Yeah, that requires
that's not okay.
Testing and stuff like that.
So, all right. So here's the thing: if he was a child who was typically quiet, a quiet student but got good grades, most teachers, because I'll be honest, most teachers are not going to give him a second look. If he's a quiet kid who makes good grades, they don't really pay attention to him.
True.
I hate to say it. I pay attention to all kids, but most teachers, if you're a good kid and you get good grades, they don't really give you a second look. They're looking at the ones that are struggling and the ones that are bouncing around the room and cussing and doing all that stuff, because that is the child that is screaming for attention. But the smart child sitting in the corner just reading a book, nobody's going to pay much attention to him. If he's sitting out there at lunch and all the other kids are playing and he's reading a book, they're more likely to think, well, he's just one of those people who likes to read a book and sit to himself. A lot of teachers are not going to make an issue out of it. They might bring it up to the parents and be like, look, I noticed that during recess, he likes to sit to himself and read a book. Is that something he does at home? If the parent says, yes, that's what he's like at home, the teacher's not going to ask any more questions. They're not going to look any deeper. They're just going to leave it at that. That's his personality. He's antisocial. But now, if he's sitting in the corner, and although he's the smartest kid in the room, and he's drawing frightening pictures, now they're going to start asking questions. So it all depends on what exactly is he doing. Because if he's a smart kid, if he was a smart child who made good grades, they're not going to give him a second look. But if he's a smart child who is drawing pictures, of killing things or, writing notes to himself about harming himself, then they'll give him a second look. And, unfortunately, that's just kind of the fact of the matter. If you're not showing that, if you're not crying out for help in some kind of way, most teachers don't really pay attention to that.
And the thing to add to that is, and like somebody said, back in the days, that wasn't the focus. And like Latoya said, like they're not. If you're getting good grades, you're doing what you're supposed to do. There's no major problem. In fact, some kids don't do a damn thing. If they go in there and they go to sleep and you say, well, he ain't bothering nobody. But then at the end, when they got all damn zeros, certain things like that, I guess if you on your job, you would call the parent and say, listen, what's going on? This kid, he sleeps from the time he gets in, can't wake him up, or they're going to notify the counselor, the assistant principal or something. But other ones say, shit, when he's up, he runs amok in his class. So sleep away. You want a pillow or whatever they did, want a blanket, whatever.
And unfortunately, that those are these are the things that a lot of people don't talk about or they don't realize. It's like if your child, the one thing that I hate as a teacher is when a parent tells me they know their child, right? But then I tell them about something their child did in the classroom, and they give me this deer in the headlights look, like, well, they don't do that at home. And that's exactly why we're sitting here having this conversation, because I want to know what it is that your child does at home, because this is what I'm seeing in class. This is what I'm noticing. So I didn't just call you in here to hear myself speak. I'm calling you in here because we're having an issue with your child that we need to discuss. Because I want to know, is this just something that they're doing because they're out of your sight and they figure, well, my mom ain't here, I can do what I want and this teacher can't tell me nothing? Or is it that they do this at home and they think that because they get away with it at home, they can come to school and do the same thing? Like, these are the conversations that we need to have. Now, if he's a child who at home, he's quiet and he sits in the corner and he just listens to music and nobody bothers him, then of course, when he comes to school, he's probably going to do the same thing. But that's a question that needs to be asked. Like I said, if a child is not doing something that is screaming out for help in some kind of way, most teachers are not going to look at them. As long as your grades are good, most teachers don't bother you.
Right.
Unless you say something off the wall in conversation.
Right.
And like I said before, and I told this story before on this platform, I didn't say nothing in school. I ain't say shit. And the teacher, my second grade teacher, Miss Menard, I guess during parent teacher conference, said to my mother, like, he doesn't talk. I don't even know what he knows. He doesn't say nothing. And my mother said, well, have you called on him? Because he knows the stuff. At home, he answers the stuff. He's pretty smart. And he don't say nothing in school. So I call on him. Well, and I told y'all this probably a month and a half ago. First thing I said when my mother told me, oh, they're going to put you in those little classes. You're going to have to ride the little bus. I went back to the because sometimes I need to be challenged from a young age. And when I went back to school, I said, this woman trying to be funny. So when she said good morning, I said, good morning, Miss Crabapple. And the whole class started laughing and she was shocked. And then from that point on, I started answering questions and stuff like that. But because it had to be broken down to me. Because sometimes you can sit in class, you don't get an opportunity to speak. I just sat back, was just chilling, like, okay. But she took that as like, man, like, what's going on socially? He doesn't say anything. And she was trying to, Miss Menard, I don't know if you're alive or not. You were trying to put me in special ed and you were trying to get me to ride that little bus. From that day forward, that was my challenge. And I said, man, hell with that. I ain't about to be looking different. And sometimes different is good. But in that case, back in those days, it wasn't good to be on that bus, that little bus, or be in that little classroom. And now some kids need that. And I can give y'all another example, then I'm going to let y'all talk. And I might have said this before. And this almost made me cry at work. It was this one girl. I don't know if it was my first year at the middle school. Oh, she was a hot mess. Always coming to my office. Out of control. Always something. Like if a day she didn't come there, I was like, she must be absent. But every day, like a couple times a day, she goes, this and that. I'm like, yo, like, what the hell? Like, what is the problem? Then I said, well, write an incident report. Well, she's saying this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to pluck her. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I'm like, write up an incident report. So that was our thing. Nah, forget it, whatever. I'm just going to go back to class. And I'm like, see you. She was overkill. She always did that. Then one day she came in, I said, are you gonna write up the are you gonna write an incident report? And then she said, Mr. Glover, the reason why I don't write an incident report, this was a word. The reason why I don't write an incident report, because I don't know how to write and I can't read like that. So, and that's the reason why I always make sure I get kicked out of class or get into fights because they make fun of me because I don't know how to do that stuff. And I'm like, I'm getting teary eyed thinking about it. And my whole thing changed. And I'm like, damn, sweetheart. Like, I'm sorry. I kept pushing you to write this and I didn't know. And we end up figuring it out. She got put into a lower level class. She got A's and B's and she flourished, but that's where she needed to be at the level with her. And she ended up excelling in that and was higher than them because she had street smarts. There was no doubt that she knew how to survive in the streets, but when she got into the academic setting, she didn't know much, whatever. So right now she probably I think she would have graduated last year. I haven't seen her since she left middle school, and I always think about her often, and I'm like, I just wonder how things gonna pan out for her. But that was one of the telling things in middle school for me. That was one of the stories. I'm like, wow. So I just changed up, and I became her biggest fan. Like I always got a champion for her when she broke down and said, I don't know how to read. I don't know how to write like that. Man, I just had a tear come out my eye. I'm a big softie.
No, it happens.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that type of stuff happens, and this is what Brother T was talking about. You know, kids that get lost in the cracks, and you know, despite what they try with education, that's going to continue to happen if A, kids don't do what she did, or B, you don't have students, teachers that do what Brother T does. So I mean, you know, it's to a point now where society is, no, individuals in society, I won't say society so much, but individuals in society are so wrapped up in just trying to survive that they don't even pay attention to what could be telltale signs that a child is falling behind, not necessarily regressing, but just falling behind their peers. And once that happens, if that's not arrested, then it becomes a recipe for disaster. And it's usually those kids who end up causing the most problems. What you were saying there earlier, Dave, that if you come into a class and you're quiet or you happen to be disruptive, you turn around and be quiet, that teacher's like, oh my God, I don't have to deal with this today. Please don't wake up, but please don't be disruptive. Because I've seen it. I've seen kids who are just disruptive to the class and the teacher just sends them out of the classroom. And as long as that student isn't in the classroom, the teacher is relieved and they're just, I don't care what the problem is. I just don't want to deal with it.
True.
And unfortunately, that is the case. Like as a special education teacher, I can't tell you how many times, like, I have students who push into classrooms. Like when I started teaching, I was self-contained. And then I went from being self-contained to I got my children in a position behaviorally where they could push into the classroom. But in the classroom, they don't have a teacher who's like me, who actually cares, about their well-being and making sure that they get the information. So once my students picked up on that, once my kids picked up on that, it was like, oh, so this is how you really feel about us, huh? They would throw a fit and tear that lady room apart just so she would get mad and be like, go back to Baker's room. And and they come walking back in my room, biggest smile ever, like they did something good. And I'm like, wait a minute, why are y'all coming back in here? And they're like, oh, she put us out. She gave us our math work and told us to come back in here, do it with you. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, y'all fought me tooth and nail about being in this classroom with me and how you want to be in a regular class. Now you're cutting up to come back in here? And it's like, well, she don't know how to teach math like you do. And I'm like, nope, that's just not an excuse. You wanted me to sign off on this paper so you could be in a regular class. Now y'all gonna sit in that regular class. And if I gotta drag you there myself, we going. And there were times where I would drag them to class myself. Y'all gonna get this lesson. Because there's no take back seats. We're not doing that. You know, and it's funny because I tell my mom all the time, if I had been a child growing up in today's age, there's no doubt that I would have been in SPED. There's like hands down. And I say that because when I started off in school, I started off in kindergarten already knowing how to multiply. Like my mom did her job at home, so that when I started school, like my mom petitioned the school board and everything. She wanted me to start early, and they was just like, "Oh, ain't no way in hell this black kid could know that much shit." So they told my mom no. So the next year, flew through kindergarten like it was nothing. I got to first grade. I gave my first grade teacher the blues. Her name was Miss Nivens. I gave that lady the blues every day because there was nothing that she could teach me I didn't already know. I could read, I could write, I could spell. I knew how to multiply. I knew how to add single digits, multi-digits, triple digits. I was just bored in her class. So I would talk and I would talk and I would talk and I would talk. So, you know, they called my mom in and, you know, and my mom was just like, well, when I want, you know, I mean, it was so bad that they gave me an IQ test. They gave me a test to see how much I knew. And when I scored on third grade level, they called my mom and it was like, hey, can we skip her? And my mom was like, you know, I went through hell to get y'all to let her in the school last year. She's like, I went through hell to get to so y'all could put her in here because I said she was ready. And y'all told me no. So she was like, hell no, deal with her.
Now that's
Hell
funny.
no, deal with her. Second grade come, they call my mom back. Okay, can we skip her again? Because I'm giving my second grade teacher the blues. My mom was like, nope, deal with it. Third grade come, the teacher complained. The principal's like, look, her mom done been here the last 2 years. Her aunt says, no, you're just gonna have to figure out something. You're just gonna have to figure out something. So my teacher got creative. I became like the tutor for all the other kids who didn't know anything in the classroom because I knew everything and I knew how to break it down in ways that it was easy for them to understand. Because a lot of times when my teacher would talk, I would just rephrase it in a simpler term, in layman's terms for kids. And they'd be like, oh, that's all she's saying? Yeah. I mean, I would draw pictures for them and everything like my mom did at home. So I'm like, she's saying all this. She could just draw a couple pictures and boom, there's your lesson. Everybody gets it. Now let's go on to the next thing. I'm bored. Because I was that kid, I would walk around and sharpen pencils just because I needed something to do.
Oh, jeez.
I was sitting in the middle of class like I was the kid. I was the child that I teach. And it wasn't because I didn't know anything. It's just that I knew everything she was teaching all damn right.
Well, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
No, that's true. I that's when kids are like super smart like that, they get bored. You know, you should have been up in a higher grade, you know, and you're right. They do not advance, not to go off the subject matter, but they do not want to advance bright African American kids. Because my daughter all of them were very bright. And I had them do the testing. They did the testing and they said, you know, well, no, she can't go for whatever silly reasons. But you know,
I always try to say it's the age thing. You know,
yeah.
even though she's at this level, she's not at the same age as the other kids, and you know, it becomes that social thing that we're always talking about. And I was more mature than most of the damn kids that were older than me, so I was like, I think I would have been fine. You know, but I hate that excuse when they're like, well, the kid, you know, you know, we don't want them to be socially awkward because they would be the youngest person compared to everybody else. If that child is mentally mature enough to handle it, I say skip them.
How do you gauge that?
It's a test. You can actually, I mean, first of all, you observe the child and how they behave and they conduct themselves. Because a child who's smart and immature, obviously, that's a child that you wouldn't move to a different grade because that's guaranteed they're going to get picked on. But a child who is in a grade, like say a child who's in third grade, but they act like a fifth grader, like the things that a typical third grader is interested in and don't have no interest in, then that's a child who would be okay if you skip them into a higher grade. They would be able to handle it because they're already of that mentality as the older children are. And there's the difference. So, I mean, it's just basically you would observe and see how do they conduct themselves? How do they interact with their peers? How do they interact with adults? Ask their parents, How do they interact with you at home? How do they interact with their siblings?
Well, the reason I asked, I remember, I think it was my freshman year at Buff State. There was a girl in there, Hispanic girl. Uh, Last name was Maldonado. Just probably one of the, and mind you, she was 16 in college at the time, and 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 I remember one day, I think my door was open, or I know I was sleeping, and she came in and she had an issue with a boy that she was dealing with. Boy, as much as you can say a boy at that age, that she was dealing with and didn't know what to do. And I think it's those type of interactions that they're concerned about. Not that this is going to occur at the elementary or the high school level, but I think they're always leery of that type of interaction that they don't want to occur that might derail the student. That's just something I'm putting out there.
Yeah, and that's why I said they talk about, the age difference, and they say because of the age it's a maturity thing and all of that. So, and that's what you said is it's on point. Those are the kinds of things that they say that they're concerned about. But that's not the case for every child. So I feel like when it comes to children, people have to understand that they're not one size fits all.
Okay.
And what's good, what works for one is not going to work for the next one. You have to take each individual child on a case by case basis and go from there.
And I think that becomes the issue when you have schools and you stay in a, live in a transient population that kids is in and out or whatever
Yeah.
the case is, and you have to get to know these kids in 1 minute. It's been situations that they left for 2-3 weeks, then we re-enrolling them again. Like what the like, and that's the parental issue. That you're going to live with your father, then you realize he ain't helping doing no homework. This environment is worse, and then you want to go back with moms, and so it's like a tug of war. I keep saying I wish I had the money to have the perfect one shop fit all model of a school that you have all of these resources in one building, and you go from there because
Well, you
schools
better
ain't
work on
serious.
writing a grant.
What'd you say?
I said you better write a grant.
Dr. Umar Johnson's waiting on you.
That ain't my thing. That ain't my thing. But
You're black male too. He'll take you. He might roll out the red carpet for you at
hey man,
DMG or as an FGMD. One of
that,
them.
that's the model how schools should be right now. You need all the resources right there. Because other than that, it ain't. It's not the same. The things that we're expected to do and the things that teachers are expected to do and all that. It's just, and that's no knock on anybody else, but it's not the same model as before. So we have to adapt, but they won't do it. They won't do it. So, and we wonder why we have the same situations that we go through. And people say often, I'm so tired, y'all talk about their subject or whatever. Well, if the shit ain't getting better, you're going to keep talking about it. And that's just how it is. And that's the thing with, if schools is supposed to be the centerpiece to try to help groom people to be law-abiding citizens of adults, and we know that it all starts from home. At first, you have to have that, that driving hammer at home. But we know how that is too. Sometimes schools raise kids, so we just we're in a dilemma, and I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I like to talk about it. I don't have the answers.
Well, I think you would have to take each situation, and that's what counselors do. That's why it's good to have counseling, because everybody takes each person's situation as it is, and have more details and have more history to be able to formulate, a diagnosis, or what's another word for not just it doesn't have to be a diagnosis, but another word. Help me out, you counselors and teachers.
Like a
Assessment.
functional behavior assessment,
Yeah,
Assessment.
FBA.
an assessment. Yeah, it's been a while. I used to look at all those forms, but yeah, I've been out of mental health for a minute, so I done switched.
I think it's about time to talk about who needs counseling this week. Let me see. You need counseling. All right, we're gonna get that segment going. One of the things, like I said, a lot of the stuff I stroll through Facebook and you see stuff. So one of it was somebody I grew up with. She had posted. I was strolling through Facebook and I saw that a woman I grew up with lost her dog at the dog park because two pit bulls attacked her dog and killed it. And she was upset. She had posted like kind of attack dogs or dogs like that, pit bulls, Rottweilers. They shouldn't be at dog parks. For me, this irritated me because many people, when you have pets, they're part of your family. They're part of your family. And no matter how people can look at it and say, oh, dogs and cats are nasty, you don't have no pet or animal in your house that you want to mistreat them because they count on you to take care of them. And to see that people at a dog park, I don't even know what a dog park look like. I don't know because I'm not into animals like that, but I can imagine that people walking around their animals in their contained and they can control them. But when you have people who can't control, want to get pit bulls because that's a popularity thing to have that, and you can't control them, and they attack somebody else's pet and kill them, that's an issue. That's an issue for me. And it pisses me off. And I don't know. I mean, people say, well, that those dogs should be put down or whatever. Not only that, but the owner of that, they should have a substantial fine for that. They should have a substantial fine for doing that. So my heart goes out to her because I can imagine. And I seen the picture. I was like, oh, a little dog, whatever, a little cute little dog, whatever. People. Just because your friends or whatever got pit bulls and all that shit, and they should have a special certificate or something to be able to have those type of dogs. And you can't handle it, you need to find something else to do. I don't know what you need to get, a parakeet, a bird, whatever. You need to get something because if you out there at a park and you have an animal and it ends up killing somebody else, imagine what it's killing the owner, what it's done to the owner of that. And I can even think about coworkers and stuff who make posts and say, hey, I had to put my dog down, and that's a different situation. And then they say, man, I don't even want to go home no more. It's not the same anymore because they count on you. They count on you. And I'm not directing it to any particular individual need counseling. I'm just saying in that particular situation where you don't have no control of that animal, your ass needs something. You need something. Don't get something you can't handle because now you done devastated somebody else's world. To me, your ass should be in jail. You need more than counseling. You should be in jail. You should do it. You can put a dog down, whatever, and then what? You go about your life and get another one, and they do the same thing. Nah. When I read that, I was like, it bothered me. I don't know. Y'all got anything to say, panel? That I didn't like that situation at all.
I mean, all too often, I've been in situations where I'm out somewhere and somebody has a vicious dog and they're like, oh, it's harmless. And I'm like, if it has teeth, it ain't harmless. Because first of all, this dog is walking you. You're not walking it down the street. Like that dog is walking you down the street. You are not walking it. It's literally pulling you down the damn street, but you're talking about I don't have anything to worry about. If that dog was to take off running after me or to charge at me, you wouldn't be able to stop that dog.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to stop that dog. I would be in a world of hurt. I'm either going to have to kill your dog and have to kill you after I kill your dog,
Yep.
or I'm going to get all bit up.
People need to think about
I
that.
mean,
I know I have a boxer. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I mean, I'm not opposed.
You muted, and I don't know what.
You muted.
see, I
We can't
think-
hear you. We can't hear you.
Oh, I was saying that, all right, it's fine with taking your dog to the dog park and all that, but make sure that you train your dog in a way that it's not going to do what those particular dogs did and harm somebody else's dog. If you can't control your dog, then that's not a dog that needs to be in public until you can get that dog to a point where you can go out and not have to worry about if it's going to bite somebody or harm somebody else's pet.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have a boxer, and he's the sweetest little thing. He's scared of everybody else. He's not. But the way that he looks scary. So I have him on a leash. I wouldn't dare try to have him where I couldn't control him in case he wants to. But he does like to jump on other dogs, and somebody may take that the wrong way. So it's just about being responsible as pet owners. But that's a sad situation, David. I agree with you. I wouldn't know what. I think I would try to kill the dog. I remember a dog coming at me as a kid. It was on his way, and my mother smacked the mess out of the dog, and he went running the other way. But I almost got attacked as a kid by a dog. But thank God my mom was there, so got to be more careful.
Well, you guys already know I have 3 cats, and I am very particular about, well, the two are upstairs. They really see the light of day, at least downstairs, because they don't get along with the third cat. They don't. When the funny story about how I got the third cat was I was doing a fish fundraiser for an organization, and my man was like, "Yo, man, come get your cat." I said, "No, my cats are upstairs." I said, "They can't get out." He said, "The black and white cat?" I said, "Yeah, cat's upstairs." So I go upstairs and I check. Oh, of course, my 2 cats are upstairs. So I come back down and look. There's a cat sitting on a chair, looks exactly like my other cat. So I end up taking the cat in, and I let them play around with each other. They got acclimated. And I came home one day, and the other black and white cat had 2 holes that were probably about half an inch in diameter on him, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's not gonna work." So I end up. My house is big enough, thankfully, that I could actually separate them. They have enough room to run around, without being on top of each other, not being bored, if you will, as much as cats can be bored. But last year I probably spent about $1,300 on one of the cats, just to clear up an infection. I don't think the infection is cleared up. I think it's a tumor. The cat's going to live the rest of its life with it, and just causes him to sneeze pretty much. So I mean, he's 13 years old, so he's lived a good life. But to that, I had a neighbor that lives across the alley from me, had a pit bull that ran up into my parking space. Now, I told the lady, I said, "Ma'am," I said, "you're fortunate I don't have a firearm, because if I did, that dog would be dead." And she had the audacity to get irate and want to call the police. I'm like, "Ma'am, go ahead and call the police." She said, "You can't threaten." I said, "Ma'am," I said, "I didn't threaten." I said, "I told you what could have occurred had I been armed." I said, "On top of that, the city has a leash law." And this is what David was talking about. I'm sorry, who said the dog was walking? Was that you?
Yeah,
Robert?
that was me.
Okay, I'm sorry.
About how these people either have a dog on a leash that is not strong enough for them to contain and control the dog, or they just had a dog out there with no leash at all.
Yeah. So last week I'm coming back from having rollerblade, and sure enough I see Dogs walking the opposite direction. This pit bull pulling his boy, and I'm just like, yep, let me cross the street because if that dog gets loose, there's gonna be some goddamn problems. And after I dismiss that dog, I'm coming to see you. So yeah, I'm not one of those dudes that play like that. Yeah, if you're one of those type of pet owners, I'm gonna tell you now, go give that animal to somebody that's more responsible than you are because you're putting other people in harm's way.
That's true. So that's that, and I'm probably only gonna go with two thoughts. And one of the things, and I don't know if y'all following it, Herb might know a little bit about this Kwame Brown thing.
I've been hearing about it, man. I'm trying to get the whole scuttlebutt about it.
Well, little background thing. Currently, he's 39, 40-year-old man. He's a former number one draft pick in 2001. He got drafted by the Washington Wizards. And at that time, I think Michael Jordan was the general manager or VP of operations, but still played. And he drafted him number one out of high school. And, it's a lot of, I guess, how it started on one of the podcasts, they were talking about how you're number one draft pick and you end up being a bust, and I think Stephen A. Smith called him a bum and all of that stuff, and it started the conversation about some trade that if Kwame Brown would have got traded, he ended up losing a bunch of money and all that. But it's so many different variables, but it's totally gotten out of hand. Where for me, Kwame Brown started it with Jordan, and I just seen a little video, and he was calling Jordan, bitch ass nigga that Jordan did this. But as an 18-year-old, I remember reading when he first got into the league, he had. Now I don't know how Mike had to be in his late 30s or something, but he said Mike was washed up and he was a bum. Don't know why someone 18 and again talking about parent issues that should be happy, like, yo, Michael Jordan just drafted you number one. He goes there and talk about Michael Jordan washed up and he's a bum, all that. So they play one-on-one. You know the drill. Michael roasted him, beat him like 10-1. Then after that, and it's well documented that Jordan's an asshole. So obviously, this 18-year-old kid on the Wizards probably got the business from Mike from here on out, which wasn't probably the greatest self-esteem builder, and so he really never had a chance. But 20 years later, his name comes up, and they're talking about him being a bust and all of that stuff. He's a bum. He's been going in on everybody, to the point that they talk about violence, talking about fighting each other, and he's just like people like
our age.
Yeah, Michael Wilbon, a Hall of Fame journalist, Stephen A. Smith, Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes, who does the show All the Smoke. Jamel Hill, who was a prominent figure on ESPN, he's been going in, and I'm like, man, what is going on? Like it's crazy. There's so many things that go through my mind when I see this, because if you follow him, Kwame Brown on Instagram, you see the videos. He laying in bed or he driving in his car. That he's just going in on folks, and I kind of feel bad for him, because I think when you reach that magnitude, being the number one draft pick, and you don't live up to your expectations, the media will destroy you. And what I fear for him running to any of these people and some major violence happen, because it's getting ugly now. It's getting ugly. They talking, people fighting and this and we could go to Seattle. You can have hand combat. You don't have to have a waiver. And he talked about fighting Stephen A. Smith. Then you got Matt Barnes, and I'm like, yo, oh, we can do this. We can do this. Come on our show, all the smoke, and we can fight. We can box before the show and all that. And I'm like, really? And it's just to me a microcosm of our black community.
Yep.
Like, what the hell? Like, what is the problem? Like 20 years later, y'all still talking about this? Let that man be. And he didn't have to respond. But I know he's responding out of hurt because being the number one, he's always going to be a meme or a joke from here on out. And he got kids now. And now he's coming back and attacking everybody. And he's talking this or that. But, and I know they have their job to do, but why y'all talking about somebody who was drafted number one 20 years ago? I'm just, and like I said, the only reason I'm bringing this up because I think it's a microcosm of our black community that, damn, it's wild. It's wild.
You know what this reminds me of, and I'm kind of glad you touched on this. Is in the same vein, Jalen Rose, who attended the University of Michigan, who now works at ESPN as well as a basketball analyst, and among other things that he does. Him and I can't remember the guy.
Chris Webber.
No. He co-hosts a show with Shannon Sharp on Fox.
The dude, what's his name? Oh hell, how the hell I don't know his name? I know you're talking about. Is it Skip? Okay. Is his name Skip?
Right, Skip Bayless.
Yeah.
They got into it over something very similar, and this is kind of what we discussed, I believe, last week with the toxic masculinity. That is a microcosm of that, where men don't understand. There's a thin line between doing your job and personalizing your attacks. You can actually speak of the player and their lack of production without personalizing. I think because of the way Kwame came into the league, he not only did he feel the pressure and he not live up to his expectations, he had the unfortunate byproduct of being drafted by Jordan. A lot of people thought that Jordan in and of himself was a fantastic, probably greatest player that's ever played, and that's always debatable depending on who you talk to. But that Jordan wasn't the greatest evaluator of talent. And as a president of basketball operations, he didn't do a good job. So you have all of those forces working against Kwame. So when he didn't produce at the level that people thought he was going to produce as a 7-foot center and a number one draft pick, I think that's always going to be a source of contention for him, much the same way that Jordan roasted his teammate at his Hall of Fame speech. There are certain things that certain athletes are never going to be able to reconcile themselves with, no matter how much money they have, no matter what they do. So all this fighting that they're talking about engaging in, to me, it's silly. And it is a greater microcosm to what is going on in our communities and our cultures, and sometimes actually in the houses, because you have people that are fighting for power. And ultimately, people have to realize the greatest power that one has is the ability to just walk away from stupid shit. I'm gonna say it just like that. It's stupid, because at the end of the day, none of this advances our cause. None of this puts us in a better position as a people, as a culture, and as a community to make us viable going forward. You know, that's just my position on it.
I don't know, ladies, y'all want anything to add to it?
I just think when you have a bunch of men testosterone,
Going in and out. Sounding like auto-tune. Still,
I'm saying that you are in a room full of men with testosterone and egos. That's going to happen. Who wants to be questioned I don't think most men don't want to be questioned about their abilities or their skill or downplayed and what they have the ability of doing.
And the unfortunate thing, like I said, this was 20 years ago, and he's coming back. Like I probably, if I get off here, when I get off here and I go to his page, he's like got a hit list, and he's going hard. He's going personal, and he has personal information on them. And I'm like, okay, when is this going to end? And you only hope that they don't say, oh, let's get somebody else involved and let's take this person out, because it's getting ugly. And I'm like, why are we doing this to each other? Why do we do this to each other? It doesn't make sense.
But just think about, and I'm just saying, like, for example, think about Facebook or even the counselor's corner, how conversations go. They turn for the worse in a second, for just the way people think and feel and how passionate they are about things, can change their whole, demeanor. So people, way things have been on this show before, people get personal and take things personal. So it's part of, unfortunately, it's part of life. But the thing is, somebody has to be the bigger person. Somebody has to humble themselves. And hopefully when that person humbles themselves, the rest will follow.
I'll T, you got anything you want to say?
I mean, talking about men and humbling, yeah, that's just not, those two words seldom actually work out right when they're in the same sentence together, because let's face it, the only reason he's having all, he's going hard like he is now is because his ego is bruised, and it was bruised long ago because he wasn't smart enough to come into the game and be humble. He figured he let the fact that he was the first round draft pick go to his head, and then he ended up saying some stuff that resulted in him getting embarrassed. And that's something he got to live with. But that's his issue that he going to have to deal with. All too often, men have these egos that get the better of them. And it's easy to say somebody's got to be the better person. But, women understand that somebody's got to be the bigger person and somebody has to walk away from the situation. Most men don't think that way. But I hate to say it, but, women are supposed to be the irrational creatures. But we have enough sense to know when to just, what, this ain't even worth the conversation, and just walk away from it. And a man, y'all like peacocks. Y'all just gotta keep fluffing y'all feathers until somebody wins the fight. And that's a terrible situation, but this is why these things happen. This is why he's going hard and going for broke, because, he like you said, he's a lifetime being, but he made himself out to be that. He needs to just wear like a badge of honor. He put his foot in his mouth when he was young, and hey, he's got to deal with that.
Yeah, and it don't seem like it's going to be any let up anytime soon from what I see.
And I mean, I just see it like this. Why are you talking about him now? This is something that happened, 20 years ago, give or take? It's like, why is he even a comment, or why is he relevant now? What he got going on that makes him relevant that y'all need to speak about this man?
But you know
as far as I'm concerned, he wouldn't even. He's what was that phrase that was going around? A non-motherfucking factor, non-factor. Like that's what he is.
From Evelyn, from Basketball Wives.
Exactly. Like he's a non-factor. So I don't even know why y'all even talking about him 20 years later. Like,
but what they did was boost his following on Instagram, and
that's all it is. Like y'all. I mean, y'all trying to help that man get on. Like, is this a whole?
They're trying to help him get a reality show.
Yeah, because that's about the only thing I see going on here. Like y'all trying to help this man get a bag on the low. Like,
reality shows, they like that. That gossip. They like the drama.
I mean, this is like every rapper out there ever. When they getting ready to drop an album, all of a sudden they got beef with every damn body under the sun, and people run out and buy these albums because they want to see, is it going to be a diss song on it, for this person, that person, and the third. It's all a marketing ploy at the end of the day to me.
True.
And he reeling them right in.
Yep. He gonna be walking right to the bank.
I had another one, but I didn't really write that one down because I kind of came across it. And one of the things is, oh, this is what we doing now, as far as the vaccine shot, putting your name in a drawing to win like $40,000 or 400,000 or whatever, state by state. It's a state by state. I know Maryland. I had just seen it. I was like, wow. Like, is this a game or what? Like, what is it going to be, a game, or is it going to be about safety in our life, whatever? Like, I'm totally confused on that. Now, if I win, I'm going to take the money and roll with it. But I just don't, like, what is the problem, man? What, how, like, is politicians a joke? Like, for real, somebody help me out here, man. What is the problem, man?
It was, in my opinion, it was all the political from the beginning, and that's why from the beginning, the way it was not taken as serious, and so many people died. So just so quickly, and it was all a political game. Now, it still is, and it's all about it's backwards to me. I was sharing earlier, it's backwards when Democrats all about freedom and life and the freedom of everything, freedom of choice and freedom, and now they're the ones that's like,
now your freedom is being challenged.
Right. And then Republicans were like, oh no, we gotta stick by the book, the Bible, and now they're like, oh no, I'm free, I ain't trying to wear no mask, you ain't know. Like, okay, this is political. This ain't about no life. This is not about none of that. It's about who gonna gain financially more off of whichever direction things go in.
Herb, you got anything? He might be out. Well, that's all I have for this evening. Anybody want to start off with closing points? Because this was a good conversation, ladies and Herb. It's a lot. It's a lot we have to unpack on a daily basis that we don't think about. There's a lot of stuff to unpack. Who wants to give their closing comment on this subject matter?
You already know mine. Don't nothing hurt but a lick. And I mean, as far as the vaccine goes, I mean, people should have seen this coming, that eventually it would come to a point where their freedom to choose whether they want to get it or not was going to come in, was going to be challenged. Because at some point, people were going to want to stop wearing these damn masks. And you saying, oh, I'm not wearing this mask, because I'm not getting this shot because of X, Y, Z. It's like, don't nobody want to hear that shit. They want to take this mask off, and you're going to go sit your ass down and take this shot, and we're going to do whatever we got to do to make sure you go get it. Either that be, if you don't get the shot, we mess with your paycheck, or, we prohibit your ability to go places. Like, it's getting real out there, and I'm just curious to see how this is going to go.
It's going to be interesting.
Well, I have, I never have the same thing because all kind of different stuff comes up in life. So this is one I saw today. Life is like a camera. Focus on what is important. Capture the good times. Develop from the negatives. And if things don't work out, take another shot. Just never give up.
Okay.
That's my quote.
Always positive. Positive. That's true. That's a microcosm of how stuff should be. You summed it up with that one. Herb, you just came back on with your mask. Are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Got any closing points or anything to say about this lottery for vaccines and all of that stuff?
Hey, you know mine, man. I'm steady Eddie. Nothing don't change. Growth and understanding occurs in the gray area. Godspeed. See you next time.
All right. And for me, the closing thing, again, like I said, when I put this stuff out there, I already know it's going to go into many different directions. What I want ultimately people to do is to critically think, to infer, draw conclusions. Now, no, I don't. I didn't know all the details or what the father did or
But
what his role, but I do know that we have fathers and mothers and siblings and people like that.
did you realize they closed?
We realize that we have people in that type of situation, so it's always good to talk about it. Will this platform heal the world? No, but it may be the following that watch it. They may say, "Hey, I learned something on this particular episode that I'm going to utilize," and that's what we have to keep going. Now, it's a shame that again, like we talked about Kwame Brown, and you have those platforms that's millions of people, and they cutting a fool. Well, we cut a fool on here too, so we just do it in smaller numbers. But the ultimate goal is to try to get information out there and for people to listen and people to say, man, hey, that touched on me. They said something. This person said, Lakia said something that was valuable. I'm going to take that. Latoya said something. So you just never know who's watching or what difference it can make. A lot of times you never get that information back with people sharing that. But trust and believe, there's people watching who you don't think that's watching, and people counting on you, and people that's following. And in this situation, with this particular situation, we know there's somebody, maybe not 50, but 30, 40, that stand with their parents that may need an outlet, and maybe the parents may just don't know which direction to go. And maybe someone hearing it and say, hey, he likes this. We're going to make sure I'm going to get up or I'm going to search the internet or something and find out how can we get him involved in this so that he can live a productive life. We just never know. It was never to shame this person or whatever the case is. It was just like these situations are real, day-to-day situations. That's all I have, gang. I'm out. Appreciate you all. Thanks to panel for joining us. Stay tuned for Monday's episode, open court discussion. Usually we have a jam-packed house, and everybody enjoy the rest of your evening and have a great weekend. Oh, the weather's been great, whatever. So get out, do something, work out, lose some weight. I'm going to take my own advice. I need to do something. I've been off and on with my workout regime, but I need to get back at it because I'm tired of looking like an out-of-shape cop. But hey, just have fun, be safe, and try to do the right thing. And remember, when you ain't looking, somebody's watching. Somebody's watching you. And you just never know the impact that you have on those individuals. All right, I'm out, good people. Thank you all for tuning in, and thanks to panel for being who you are, special and gifted, and giving your insight. All right, we out, people. Peace.
Peace.